this is my Zika book. I started on this before this pandemic came out. I started this in 2019 when I noticed that Zika had disappeared. And it was a big deal in 2016 and made all the news. It was the top medical news story of 2016 completely. It was one of the top 5 stories of 2016. It's a long time ago now, 7 years. There was the Trump-Clinton election. There was Brexit and a few other things. And Zika was number 4 or number 5, depending where you look. And then crickets, nothing, silence afterwards. And you have to wonder why nobody brings this up anymore. So I started working this, I was kind of the pandemic expert before I knew this was coming. And it is, it didn't really coincide with it. I had a hard time getting anything published about it, even then, before COVID came around. I've got one quick anecdote, hopefully. Well, first of all, I can just mention, about the pandemic. The Zika virus is real, and microcephaly is real. They're both real things. Zika virus is a harmless dengue. There are 4 dengue strains, and this little guy over here could be Zika. It's not quite. It's dengue-like. It's a little bit like Omicron to SARS-CoV-2. It's the same basic shape and form, but it's not as dangerous. And the question is, it's never been in Brazil or in the Americas in general. And they were on the hunt for a virus to begin with. Some doctors, they were looking for chikungunya. Don't ask me to spell it, because they wanted money and attention to go to the poorer north of Brazil versus the wealthier, more Europeanized south of Brazil. And so they wanted a virus to be there. They wanted chikungunya. They started a group called Chick v. the Mission, named after the 1986 movie The Mission, which was literally about a mission of Jesuits who protected the Indians against the colonials, blah, blah, blah. And so they envisioned themselves as protectors, and they were going to use a virus to affect social change. So there are some little whispers of what you might see coming around the bend here. They succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but they had adopted Zika instead of chikungunya. There was no chikungunya. There may or may not have been Zika, because dengue is identical and the testing wasn't there for Zika. And so you can easily cross-react dengue tests with Zika, blah, blah, blah. And then as far as microcephaly goes, it's a real problem. It's a sad problem, depending on severity, diminished intellect, small heads for babies. And so there was potentially a little burst of that in Recife in 2015. And somebody from part 1 happened to live in part 2 and made the connection, said, oh, this is new and that's new. Therefore, A causes B. And that became C. And they leaked it to the press and it became this huge panic. And all of a sudden, everyone's like finding microcephalic babies, and they didn't have a firm standard. They didn't have any experience with it. There had been no prior year registry. They had no way of comparing. Anyway, when the dust settled, when they started having firm standards, they didn't find any microcephaly, even in 2016. And they haven't found it anywhere on Earth ever since, even though they finally came up with Zika test and so forth. So it's been kind of a weird charade, and hundreds of thousands of babies were never born in Brazil, and probably 500,000 or more throughout the world because of this alarm. And women still throughout the tropics, stay indoors. They slather on insect repellent. We treat our kids shabbily. These are the future kids, mind you. These are pregnant women. And so, but the whole disdain for the process, and there was abortion recommended. People were told to have a moratorium on birth completely throughout the tropics until a Zika vaccine could be created. Mind you, it's 2023 right now. I'm checking my watch, and there's still no Zika vaccine. So ostensibly, if the WHO had been listened to and followed, there'd be nobody in public school, elementary school in Brazil, first and second grade or whatever, starting, whatever. There'd be a whole absence of humanity if people listen to the Zika threat. So it's not as if the WHO is incapable of exaggerating. It's not as if the CDC is incapable of exaggerating. Dr. Fauci was part of this whole thing. And the weird thing is, as it's disappeared and nothing's happened in the interim, nobody's reformulated, nobody's apologized, and there's been no hearing and so forth on this. Anyway, that's my 3 cents on the topic. I apologize for that diatribe. I very much enjoyed your being here, and hope people follow you along as soon as possible.
Thank you.